Lori Schmaker and her husband adopted a little girl named Selah from Bulgaria, and they brought her home in 2011. This is Lori's story, but she calls it a God story.
I had found an adoption agency called All God's Children. They had domestic adoptions there, and they had international ones. Eventually, we settled on Bulgaria, and it was honestly the first country I looked at but turned away from, because logically it was more expensive than the other countries, and it was a longer waiting process, and it meant 2 trips to Bulgaria versus 1 before we could bring our daughter home. You'd hurry up, get something done, and then wait for one government entity or another to approve paperwork. So it's a lot of paperwork, and we were on a waiting list. But then one day I opened up my email, and there was this picture of this little girl, and the moment I saw her, the tears just started pouring. I felt heat from head to toe. I was shaking, and I felt as though I was looking into the eyes of our daughter. So after we signed the paperwork to adopt this little girl and filled out all of the forms, we were waiting for a hearing that was supposed to happen over in Bulgaria. And that hearing really, we felt, was for the most part a formality. Granted, any time in adoption and relying on 2 different countries, you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. There's lots of things that could happen to stop processes. But as far as this adoption, our daughter was viewed as a special needs adoption, although her special needs were very minor on paper. So we thought it was pretty much just a formality that we would be able to get through the trial or get through the little hearing, have the paper stamped, and I was waiting at home for the phone call from our caseworker to say, okay, she's going to be your daughter. Here's your date for your visiting trip. So I waited that morning.
Lori got the call from the caseworker. Something was wrong.
The words out of her mouth were, "I'm sorry, Lori. This little girl was adopted by another family." And I felt like I was just kicked in the gut. I could hardly breathe. I couldn't believe it, because in the time that had passed, God had put in me the love of a mother. I loved this little girl. Our whole family loved her. Our boys were so excited about this little girl, and my husband had the same reaction to her when I showed him her picture, and we'd done the research, as far as an international doctor that would look at her medical record to see, are these things that we can handle? Is this, what are we looking at here? And I just loved her. And when she said that, it was such a profound loss. And I've also gone through a miscarriage in my life, and it felt eerily similar. It's that love that you have immediately, and I think those dreams and those hopes, and all of a sudden it's gone. Mm-hmm. And I grieved and grieved and grieved, and I held on to that for about 6 months of grief. I came to a point finally of saying, okay, God, she was yours before she was ever mine. You know every hair on her head. You know where she is, and I trust you that what you are doing in her life right now is what's meant to be and is the best for her. And I don't understand why you would allow me to fall so in love with her only to lose her. But I trust you, and I praise you, and I thank you. Because even if the gift for me is that I get to pray for her all the days of my life, then I praise you and I thank you for that. And I really felt a level of peace. I really did. Like the peace settled, and I thought, okay, I can do this again. I can engage in this adoption process again. I'm ready to receive whatever God has for me. And a week later, not even a week, I opened my email, and connected to a woman. So back then we didn't have the Facebook groups and all that stuff. So it was more like, it was still like Yahoo chat groups and things like that. So there was an international adoption Yahoo chat group that I was a part of.
Lori finally got the courage up to go through hundreds of emails until she came across one woman that she felt very encouraged by. They made friends through the chats, but due to the adoption process, she couldn't share any information about the child. But that woman introduced her to a woman in Hawaii. Now listen to this part of the story.
In that meeting where we were told that this little girl had been adopted by another family in Italy, that adoption had not gone through. The woman in Hawaii had ended up getting a call and had then stepped in to try and adopt because she knew some people, so they were able to do it in a different kind of process but nobody knew, and our caseworker didn't know, the agencies didn't know. The adoption was not working for the woman in Hawaii, and she had just sent in her paperwork saying, I can't adopt this little girl. Our little girl was available for adoption. And this all came from one person out of thousands in a chat group that I happened to notice, that I happened to send an email, my only email, because I didn't email at all, hardly. And that woman was in Ohio, who ended up knowing this woman in Hawaii. And the day that I called our caseworker to say, hey, I have reason to believe that our Gergana, what's her name? Our Gergana is available for adoption. Of course, our caseworker, because she'd been trying to counsel me, all these 6 months, she knew how grieved I was because I would call her and I'd say, are you sure? Have you checked again? Has she been adopted? I don't believe she's really been adopted. I think God said she's supposed to be our child. I just don't believe she's been adopted. And so when I called this time, her reaction was, oh, Lori, like she just, oh, you poor thing. I said, no, seriously, I am not. I've emotionally gone through a whole lot, and I'm on the other side, and I surrendered, and I am not talking to you out of my grief. I am talking to you out of facts. Please investigate this.
Good.
She called me back the next day, and they found our daughter's file on a stack of paperwork that was to be filed in the unadoptable file cabinet. Even a day or two later, those would have been put in there, and they don't even go back and look at them. So God did it just in the nick of time.
He certainly did. But I'm thinking about all the kids that really were left behind.
I know. It's a very sad situation. And their reasoning is because 2 of the adoptions fell through. So the Italian family fell through, and then the second family fell through. Mm-hmm. And so they, on their limited power, say, okay, we're not going to work on trying these children anymore. We're going to work on other children. So they kind of go back. If they were to someday get all the other children taken care of, then they might go back to these children. With God showing us that this little girl was meant to be ours beyond the shadow of a doubt, we knew that as we faced hurdle after hurdle after hurdle yet to bring her home, we were always assured this is what we're meant to be doing. Because so often you could look at the trial, at the challenge in your life and say, well, maybe God doesn't want us to do this. Maybe this is not what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And we knew that we were, because of what he had shown us. When we look back and remember and see all that he did to show us that she's meant to be ours. And so we went on the first trip. It went wonderfully. I fell madly in love with her. Daddy fell madly in love with her. But we had to leave her again, because you sign paperwork, you go before the court and their court, and you say, yes, I want to adopt. And then you have to go home and wait for them to process everything and then tell you when you can come back and pick her up. It was supposed to be 3 to 5 months in between the 2 trips. Ours was 7 because they the enemy did not want this little girl coming home. So 7 months of things going wrong that took forever to get back to her. When we got back to her to bring her home, she had gotten very sick. She has a lot more special needs than anything that was ever on her paperwork. And a lot of those had began to manifest while she was there. And a lot of her behaviors had come out, and she had gone through a lot of trauma in her, in the orphanage where she was, the care. She does have a significant amount of special needs, physically, emotionally, developmentally. Because of the trauma that she went through, there's a lot of things that she's had to work through, which is also complicated because developmentally she is so behind that she doesn't have the capability to process a lot of the things that you would like her to be able to process in a through counseling or other means. So it has been long and hard, and our family was completely turned upside down after we came home. But again, because of what God showed us, we never second guessed it. And as my husband and I, even at our lowest point, when it was a hard division in our marriage, because something that hard brings out your weaknesses. When we deal with a challenge, our weakest parts come out. And so I was dealing at home and he was dealing at work, and a wedge was forming between us. But there were nights that we sat and I cried and he stared at me. But the one thing that never happened was what couples could say to each other: "You're the one that decided to do this. Why do you want to do this?" And that never ever came up, because both of us knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that this little girl was our little girl and she was meant to be ours.
Lori's book, Surrendered Hearts, is available on Amazon.